Welcome back. Now, later this week, there's yet another reason to celebrate. Friday is National Donut Day, and we had the chance to chat with friend of the show, Raffi Andonian, about the history of this observance and what makes it so sweet. Take a look. Surprising and sweet donuts have a fun story in Americana, and here to tell us more about it, we've got celebrity historian Raffi Andonian. Thanks for joining us again, Raffi, and bringing the treats.
Absolutely. I don't like a lot of sweets, but I do love donuts.
Oh, man, who doesn't? How did donuts get their start?
So believe it or not, in archaeology, there is evidence of what we may recognize as donuts with Native Americans here in the Americas. But the way we think of donuts starts in New York City with the Dutch. It was known as New Amsterdam in the 19th century.
Okay.
And they were known as oily cakes is how they were known. That's kind of how we think about it. But one of the best stories I like about donuts in the 19th century is when a sailor's mother gave him donuts and put spices from the spice cargo because they're on the ship, okay? And in the process, she put some ingredients, hazelnuts in there, and I think almonds, some other nuts in there, which
she just added a little extra.
Get it? Donut. That's how you get the name. Yep.
Who knew?
That's right. That's
it's
right.
actually from hazelnut or some kind of a nut.
That's right. The nuts that are going in the center there. Now, we don't really know how the hole in the middle is, but one of the legends is, whether true or not, is that same sailor who did actually try to take credit. So he did tell these stories, but it was decades later. So who knows about the memory?
Yeah, sure.
That he would put it on the wheel of the ship, you know, as he's going around, hence the hole, you know, because it has the little spokes that stick out.
Yeah, sure.
So the wheel of the steering of the ship, so the donuts can stay on there. That's the story. One of the stories he said, the son that actually got that.
Fascinating. We're getting some shots too of the donuts that you just brought in. These, man,
locally made.
Locally made. This one has Fruit Loops on it, so it's great for breakfast.
That's right. A great example
of those extra vitamins in there for you.
That's right.
For the kids.
It's a great example of craft donuts being very important today. It wasn't always like that. Even as recently as the 1990s, donuts were kind of looked down upon by many chefs. You know, it was fat and sugar.
Yeah.
But now, kind of with the revival of a lot of things, crafts, whether in drinks and food and all kinds of things, donuts have kind of made a comeback, having these fresh, you know, kind of revitalization. Now, one of the ways donuts were popular earlier, because it goes through these ups and downs, is through war, believe it or not.
Really?
World War I, there were 250 Salvation Army volunteers, women, who went abroad with the American soldiers in France, and they took with them donuts. They were known as donut lassies. That was one of the terms that was used for them. A lot of soldiers initially didn't like the volunteers until the women started to make donuts and they got sweetened up. The guys started to get excited about that. And that is one of the reasons that donuts kind of made a comeback. There's one of the posters that you're seeing. There's one of the stations in France that you're seeing on screen. That's exactly what we're talking about, World War I.
Man.
And then it happened again in World War II. It was popular again to have the donuts abroad there. It reminded them of home. World War II was much longer, of course, for the United States, at least, from the context of U.S. involvement. And so, and the reason World War II matters is because think about the context of the period. Donuts had gotten really popular in 1920, so we're talking about now 20 years prior, but it leads up to the World War II. I'll show you how. And so in New York City, you have a Russian exile that creates a donut machine. The donut machine was putting out donuts at a faster rate and also makes a spectacle of it in New York City. Think about what Krispy Kreme
I was going to say, absolutely. You can watch them.
It makes a show as well. That helps popularize it. The New Yorker magazine talked about how beautiful and dreamy the donuts looked. Clark Gable, in one of his movies in the 1930s, in the Hollywood Golden Era, shows how to dunk a donut. The Chicago World's Fair, also in the 1930s, had donut posters and was promoting donut as a modern food. So that's the context, and that's where Krispy Kreme starts in 1930s. That's the context in which you roll into World War II. Donuts are now very popular, right? And as a result, those soldiers are enjoying it as well, and they enjoy a post-war boom as well. When they come back, 1950s, a lot of prosperity. Now Dunkin' Donuts has entered the mix as well, in addition to Krispy Kreme. And now you have this American food, if you will, that's combining these pieces. So those pieces come together. Now, funny thing about Krispy Kreme that you may not know, it was actually, speaking of France and being abroad and during World War I, it was actually a French chef from New Orleans. It's his recipe that he sold to somebody else who then started Krispy Kreme. So think about all the people involved here. We have France, we have French, we have Russian, we have New Amsterdam and the Dutch, we have Native American, we have Clark Gable. That's a truly American story, how these these pieces fit together, hence the ultimate
And
American
here it is,
food.
absolutely, yeah. And whether you spell it D-O-U-G-H or D-O-N-U-T, doesn't matter. It's delicious
given
either
the story
way.
we heard, I'm going to think of it as D-O-U-G-H.
Because of the
although
dough.
I tend to shorten it to D-O as well, but I kind of think probably the historically accurate way is D-O-U-G-H.
I know, you're probably right about that. Which is your favorite? Which are you going to go for? Let's go in. Let's dive in.
I actually like the cake donut, so I'm going to go for one of these two, especially blueberries.
Okay.
I'm going to go for the blueberry one.
You go for that. I'm going to go for this red cake donut. We're going to keep eating donuts to celebrate National Donut Day, June 7th. Thanks, Raffi, for joining us.
Cheers.
As always, cheers. Cheers to the donuts. The D-O or the D-O-U-G-H. Either way, delicious.